I'm feeling lazy. I just can't motivate today. I can't get myself to do anything today. Does that sound familiar? These are feelings that most of us struggle with from time to time, but for someone with an executive function challenge such as ADHD, autism, or other forms of neurodivergence, it can be a real struggle. Part of the problem is that we are relying so much on motivation in the first place. There are ways in which we can reshape our lives so we don't have to rely so much on this nebulous concept of motivation or executive function itself. This episode, I'm going to talk you through how we can do that so that we can get more things done. If you don't know me already, my name is Lee and I'm a leadership coach specialising in growing the careers and businesses of people who are neurodivergent. I'm neurodivergent myself, diagnosed with ADHD, there's probably some autism in there as well, and I am passionate about growing the careers of us neurospices through coaching and education. Motivation is a little bit of a loaded word for us neurospices. Growing up, it can sometimes be used against us. You're not getting things done because you just need to get some motivation and get going. Or we might be told you could achieve so much more if you were just that little bit more motivated. All of this were executive function challenges, but motivation was the word that was used. Of course, this comes from a lack of understanding of what was actually going on. What was going on is we were having executive function struggles. And executive function struggles don't mean that we don't want to do the thing. We might really want to do the thing, but we have a block. Something is stood in the way that means we can't get on with the thing that we're trying to do. All this talk of motivation, it's not helpful. It just makes us feel bad and makes us less likely to do the thing. So it's a good job that motivation is overrated anyway. Regardless of how you feel about the word or not, the fact is it actually doesn't help us that much when it comes to really getting things done, regardless of our executive function challenges. Of course, me just telling you to forget about motivation doesn't exactly help with these executive function challenges. And I'm not really going to talk about how to solve these. There's a lot of good content already online about how to solve executive function challenges, and maybe it's something I might talk about in other videos, but it's not where my focus is for today. Instead, I want to look at how do we make things cost less executive function. I like to borrow from spoon theory when I talk about executive function because it is a fantastic metaphor. At the start of each day, we begin with a certain number of executive function spoons. Now that number varies depending on how much sleep we got, how stressed we are, all sorts of things like that. And as we go throughout the day, we're spending some of that executive function on getting things done. Maybe you're someone who struggles to get out of bed. And so the simple aspect of getting out of bed, that costs spoons, and it might cost quite a few spoons if it's really hard. Brushing your teeth might be something you do naturally. You roll out of bed, you go into the bathroom. So that one is executive function, relatively cheap. Maybe your coffee is free. It's a habit that you do every day. You go straight away and make some coffee, and maybe actually you gain some spoons back from doing it because caffeine can sometimes help our ADHD brains. Self-regulation, the way we make ourselves do the thing, is what costs executive function spoons, and eventually we start to run out. This metaphor isn't quite perfect because this doesn't look like I'll be spending spoons here and there all day and then suddenly my spoons are depleted and I can no longer executive function. What it actually looks like is some days the cost of things just goes up. Some days I can sit down and I can get on with work straight away in the morning and be super productive. Other days the executive function cost of just starting is significantly higher and it costs me way more spoons to get going. What I want to talk about today is how to reduce that upcharge, how to make things cheaper so that even on days when we're low on executive function, the expense of starting things isn't insurmountable. The main source I'm drawing for this video is the book Atomic Habits by James Clear. It's a book that I'd recommend neurospices read with a bit of a critical eye. It's very much designed for neurotypicals, and so there is advice and strategies in there that just don't work for us. Having said that, there's a lot of good advice as well, and some of it just needs a bit of a tweak to make it more neurodivergent friendly. So let's go ahead and do that. The premise behind Atomic Habits is that we get things done by building good habits through an aggregation of marginal gains. So this is small things that allow us to improve over time, and is actually the strategy used by British cycling to start winning Olympic medals. We can come a long way through building these very small atoms of habits. The beauty of building habits is that when something is ingrained as a habit, it becomes executive function free, or at least executive function cheap. I played piano since I was 14 years old. When I was a teenager, I was pretty bad at practicing it. There was often other stuff going on. Through university, I was often juggling it with my studies. When I moved into the working world, I got a lot more serious about it. And then in the pandemic, with nothing to do, nowhere to go, I decided I was going to practice every day when I got up in the morning. Piano practice is now something that is executive function free for me. I get up in the morning, I brush my teeth, all that kind of stuff, and then I roll to the piano and start practicing. I managed to build this habit so that it no longer costs me executive function. Actually, I really enjoy it as well. Note that through building this habit, I don't even need to think about it. I don't plan to practice piano, it's just the thing that I do. Now, there are a few things that went into building this habit to make it executive function free. And so I'm going to draw from Atomic Habits here to kind of explain how that worked out. The first is a process of habit stacking, which I know is something that is recommended for executive function challenges. You notice what I said, I get up in the morning, I go to the bathroom, I brush my teeth, I get dressed, all that kind of stuff, and then I sit down at my piano. The get up in the morning is not free. It does cost me some executive function spoons, but the stuff that follows that follows on naturally because it's my morning routine, my morning habits. All I've done is tacked one more habit onto the end of that. So when I finish one habit, getting dressed, I go to the next one, play piano. As I said, all the points between getting up and sitting down at the piano are habits. They're executive function free. My brain is not quite awake when I pick up my toothbrush and start brushing my teeth. It's just a thing that I do. So I stack piano onto the end of that sequence. It took executive function for me to add piano onto the end, and there was a period of time where I had to executive function to get it done every day. But over time it became cheaper and cheaper until where it is today, as it became an ingrained habit. Now, at this point I want to pause a little bit and talk about consistency, because while adding new consistency and routine into our day that we do every single day might be something that the people with autism are like, cool, yeah, I can do that. I can already hear the ADHDers screaming at me, how can I be consistent with it every day? I can't be consistent with anything, how can I do it every day? So I'm going to read a quote from Atomic Habits that was so impactful to me that I put the book down and took a picture of it when I read it. So here we go. You don't need a unanimous vote to win an election, you just need a majority. It doesn't matter if you cast a few votes for a bad behaviour or an unproductive habit. Your goal is simply to win the majority of the time. This is huge because it is a redefinition of what consistency looks like. Consistency doesn't look like showing up every day and doing the thing flawlessly. Consistency looks like a majority, looks like that 51% needed to win the election. It's not showing up every day until one day we miss it and then it's game over. It's showing up on average. Consistency on average, not consistency every day. I think this redefinition of consistency is really important, especially for us ADHDers, because we tend to slip into black and white thinking. So either I do this every day, or I miss that day, so I don't do this every day, so I don't do this at all. And it's not like we can't think of shades of grey. We're really capable of that, and when I point that out to my clients, they immediately understand the nuance. The thing is, the nuance doesn't come naturally to us straight away. We have to pause, we have to reevaluate. So our instinct is to think, either I'm doing this every day, or I'm not. A lot of the way that neurotypical productivity advice is given also often feeds into that. We've all heard of the 1% better every day, and you'll be 37 times better at the end of the year. It's beautiful to think how a small improvement every day can lead to something huge by the end of the year, and I do love the sentiment behind it. But the problem is that it's hard for us to get 1% better every day. And some days we're going to get 0% better. And we might just end up feeling bad about ourselves and calling the whole thing off. But what if we just tweak it slightly? What if, instead of trying to get 1% better every day, we just aim for 1% better on average? Because some days we'll go into hyper-focus, we'll feel on top of the world, we'll have all the executive function there, and we will get 5% better that day, which is huge. Other days, it's not going to be there and we're going to get none. Consistency isn't getting 1% better every day. Consistency is getting there on average. The last thing I want to talk about today is about setting up an environment to make starting a habit easier or executive function cheaper. I know that Jessica of How to ADHD refers this as having everything at the point of performance. This is the exact same concept. If we have everything that we need to do a habit at the point and time in which we need to do this, this makes it much easier to get started, much cheaper executive function wise, and makes us more likely to do it. My piano is a permanent fixture in my living room. The music that I need to practice is in the stool. The stool is in front of the piano. All I need to do in the morning is sit down, open up and start playing. I even have a silence piano, which means I can play it with headphones so that if my partner or the neighbours are sleeping, I don't have to worry about upsetting them. This combination of everything being there when I need it is what makes piano executive function free for me. This also works because it tackles that out of sight, out of mind feature that often comes with ADHD. If it's there in our vision at the time we need it, then we're more likely to be able to pick it up and go for it. It also makes us less likely to get distracted and do something else while looking for the equipment or whatever it is we need to do the thing. So what does this mean in practice? Well, it means you could sleep in your gym gear with your gym kit by the front door and your running shoes right there, so you can just pick up and go first thing in the morning. You don't have to spend the executive function getting dressed, finding your stuff, It's all right there. It means keeping your journal on your desk with a pen on top, so when you sit down you can just open it and start writing straight away. It means keeping your art supplies with your paper in a room that inspires you so you can sit down and be creative straight away. It means keeping a pair of headphones on top of your laptop so you can put them on and shut out the world when you need to focus. Building our environment in a way that helps our neurodivergent brains is amazing for improving our life in general. But anything that we can do to minimize the executive function expenditure is a net benefit for our life overall. I have so much more to say on this topic, but I actually want to leave it here for today. One big takeaway that I do want to give is that there is so much productivity advice out there, and a lot of it isn't neurodivergent friendly. The good news is that a solid portion of it is or can be tweaked to become neurodivergent friendly, but we really need to have a critical eye to be able to understand what works and what doesn't. With that in mind, I'm actually going to follow up next time with a deep dive into Atomic Habits, because it is one of the most popular productivity books out there, and talk about what does work for neurodivergence, what really doesn't, and again, more of the tweaks that we can use to make it work. But that is a topic for another day. Hit the subscribe button so you don't miss it when it comes out. Please leave me a comment with your thoughts and a like, and thank you for your attention. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.